While American Adventists were traveling to Australia, Australian political ideas were traveling to America. In November 1892, the Australian secret ballot was used nationally for the first time in the United States, resulting in the election of Grover Cleveland as president. On December 13, 1892, Ellen White attended the closing exercises of the first term of the Australasian Bible School on Kilda Road in Melbourne. N.D. Falkhead, treasurer of the publishing house, attended the school board meeting that followed. Falkhead was a member of several secret societies and had refused to leave them in spite of the urging of his fellow believers. He was surprised when, after the meeting, Willie informed him that Ellen was waiting down the hall to talk to him.
Mother's right down here at the end of the hall, Brother Falkhead. What is it? You started just now.
I just remembered, Pastor White. Saturday night I had a dream in which Sister White had a message for me. I wonder...
This is the room Mother's staying in while she's in Melbourne. I'll leave you here.
Thank you.
Come in, Brother Falkhead.
Do you have something for me, Sister White?
Indeed I do. The burden of your case has been on my mind, and I have a message for you from the Lord. I'd like to arrange a time to meet with you and your wife so I can present the message.
Why not give me the message now?
Well, I hadn't planned to, but I guess I can. There are 50 pages of material over here on the table. I wrote this testimony when I first arrived in Australia a year ago. I had it in an envelope to mail to you, but a voice said to me, "Not yet, not yet. They will not receive your testimony."
I truly wish to hear what you have to say.
Then let's sit down while I read the message.
Earlier, Brother J.H. Stockton had asked Falkhead how he would respond if Ellen White had a testimony telling him to leave the lodges. Falkhead had replied that such a message would have to be mighty strong. Now he listened in amazement as Ellen, often using Masonic language, read to him of things she could not possibly have learned from any human source. She told of seeing him make small donations to the church and large ones to the lodges. She told him where he sat in meetings, and more.
And then I heard you addressed as Worshipful Master.
What?
I saw scenes of drinking and carousal at the lodge meetings, especially after you had left. My dear Brother Falkhead, unless you sever every tie that binds you to these associations, you will lose your soul. I cannot relate all that was given me, but...
Sister White, do you know what you just did?
I've done nothing unusual.
You just gave me the sign of a Knight Templar. A secret sign.
I didn't know. It was a movement I saw my guide in the vision make. My burden is that you understand the impossibility of being both a Freemason and a wholehearted Christian. Brother Falkhead, you've gone pale.
You did it again. The sign you just made is known only to the highest order of Masons.
I didn't realize I'd moved my hand.
You did. In a sign that's held in the strictest secrecy. No woman on earth could know it.
My attending angel did make a movement at that part of my vision, but I wasn't aware I had repeated it.
I accept every word of your testimony. I'm a member of 5 lodges, and 3 others are under my control. I'll attend no more of their meetings, and shall close my business relations with them as fast as possible.
You do my heart good, and yourself much credit.
I'm so glad you didn't send me that testimony, for then it wouldn't have helped me. But those secret signs you've made have convinced me your testimony is from God.
On February 8, 1893, Ellen arrived in Auckland on the long-delayed visit to New Zealand. With her were Emily Campbell, Willie White, and Elder G.B. Starr and his wife Nellie. After 12 days of meetings in the Auckland church, the group made the 24-hour trip by coastal schooner to Whangaroa Harbor, arriving at night. Metcalf Hare and Joseph Hare Jr. met them with a skiff with a 3-mile journey by river to Joseph Jr.'s home at Kao.
Oh, the stream's called Kao, same as the town. 'Tis about 2 hours it'll be taking us to get to Joseph's place. We'll take you to Father's house tomorrow.
It's too dark to see much, Brother Hare, but from what light the new moon gives, I get the impression that the scenery along the river is beautiful.
Spot on, Sister White. Sure, and we call this God's own country. Even me, as I grew up in dear old Ireland. The shores are lined with hills covered with fern trees and kauri pines, and nowadays there are lots of orchards too. The big industry around here is timber. Bushwhackers fell the trees.
Bushwhackers? Outlaws do the work?
Oh, no, Sister Campbell. Bushwhackers is our name for men who work in the bush, the backcountry.
Oh.
They roll the logs down the hills to the creek, and then when the winter floods come, they float 'em down to Wangaroa.
It's so peaceful. The creek is smooth as a lake.
Aye, Brother White, 'tis smooth now, but when the floods come, 'tis another story.
2 days later, from the safety of Father Hare's home on high ground, Ellen and her companions got a sight of the river in flood when a sudden rainstorm caused widespread destruction. Over the next 3 weeks, Ellen spoke to members of the community several times in the Wesleyan Chapel in Kao. On March 16th, she left for Napier on the east coast of North Island, where she stayed with Dr. Margaret Carow, a dentist.
My husband Jacob is a physician, so we're both Dr. Cairo. He hasn't joined the church, but he's cordial to it.
I'm glad to hear that.
Oh, here's young Maui. Sister White, I'd like you to meet Maui Pomare. Maui, this is Sister Ellen White. She'll stop with us during camp meeting.
I'm very pleased to meet you, Brother Pomare.
Tenakwe, Sister White. It's a privilege to meet you. I look forward to hearing you speak at camp meeting.
He accepted the message when he was a student at Teote, the Maori college, but his family opposed his new beliefs so strongly he left school. He's stopping with us for the time being.
The first camp meeting in the Southern Hemisphere opened in Napier, New Zealand on March 23, 1893, early autumn there. Because of the financial depression, few were expected to attend. So when more than 50 showed up, there was a scramble to procure more tents and set up a dining pavilion. Some attendees found rooms in the community. Many non-Adventists from Napier attended the meetings, and 6 baptisms resulted. Ellen spent the winter in the mission building in Wellington, at the southern tip of North Island. While Willie went to Australia for 3 months, Ellen put aside all correspondence and determinedly settled down to write on the book, which would be titled The Desire of Ages. Her last 8 teeth were causing her such pain that early in July she sent for Dr. Carow to pull them.
Dr. Carow, I didn't expect you so early this morning.
I arrived in the night. Are you sorry to see me?
I'm pleased to see Sister Carow, certainly. Not so certain whether I'm pleased to see Mrs. Dr. Carow, dentist.
Because she suffered adverse reactions to the medication available in those days, Ellen took nothing to deaden the pain. Dr. Carow was so upset at the thought of hurting Sister White that she became ill. After the tooth pulling, the patient turned attendant and led a shaking Dr. Carow to a chair. In August, toward the end of winter, Ellen returned to the Napier area. Willie had returned from Australia.
How are you, Mother?
Willie, I have so much to be thankful for. For the first time in more than a year, I can bend my knees to pray. I came through the damp, windy winter very well, and I can talk clearly, even though I don't have my dental plates yet. God is so good to me.
I'm very happy to hear that. How did the work go in Wellington?
Oh, I have never seen opposition so persevering and determined. The prejudice is like a granite wall, especially since they've gotten hold of the books Dudley Canright has written since he left the church. Well, to some extent, all New Zealand is prejudiced against our message. God has a people in this place, but how can we reach them?
Some people have been reached. In fact, a Maori youth came to Napier recently to talk to workers about attending the Kilda Road School in Melbourne.
Maui Pomare? I met him at Dr. Margaret Caro's home.
No, Dr. Caro's paying for him to go to Battle Creek College for medical training. I'm speaking of Wee Makara. He has an inheritance from his mother, but because he's only 16, his grandfather controls it and won't let him have it to attend our school.
His grandfather dislikes Adventists?
He does now. Some of his relatives told him libelous stories about the church.
Everyone who wants to work for the Lord should have the opportunity to receive training. I'll lend the young man the money to go to school in Melbourne.
Thank you, Mother.
And I'm glad Brother Pomare's going to Battle Creek. I was impressed with him. He'll make a good physician.
Maui Pomare became discouraged by the prejudice of some church members, and after his return from America, he let his membership lapse. Later, however, he applied Adventist health principles in his position as health minister for New Zealand. In 1922, he was knighted by King George V. In 1930, just before his death at Glendale Adventist Hospital, Sir Maui Pomare returned to the church. In November 1893, Ellen attended a second camp meeting, this one in Wellington. Also present were General Conference President O.A. Olson, just arrived from Africa, and the crew of the missionary ship Pitcairn. This camp meeting did much to crumble the walls of prejudice. On December 13, 1893, Ellen, Emily Campbell, Willie, and Elder Olson boarded the Werarapa for the 7-day trip back to Australia. At the first camp meeting in Australia in January 1894, workers met with General Conference President Elder O.A. Olson to organize the first Union Conference, the Australasian Union. W.C. White was elected president, A.G. Daniels vice president, and L.J. Rousseau secretary. A major consideration of the new conference was the training school.
The Kilda Road School has served us well, but it's time we established a permanent facility. The General Conference voted $2,000 last February to help us in this endeavor. It's time to take action.
I quite agree, Elder White. Just what sort of facility are you thinking of?
I'm convinced my mother had the right idea, Elder Daniels. We should build a school in the country and develop an Adventist settlement there. That way, some of those who are suffering in these hard times could make a living farming. Don't you agree, Elder Daniels?
Actually, Elder White, I don't. Not fully. If we were to locate in the country, we'd draw young people from the churches and weaken the local work. What do you think, Brother Rousseau?
I agree with you, Elder Daniels. Besides, I believe you're suggesting a day school, Elder White. And experience in America has shown that we can maintain better discipline in a boarding school, where the students are totally under the control of the faculty.
But the students wouldn't be on their own. They'd be living with their families.
I'm sorry. That just doesn't seem like the answer to me. However, I do agree that the school should embrace not only Australia and New Zealand, but the Asian countries and the Pacific Islands.
So do I, Elder Daniels. Now let's look around Victoria and New South Wales.
I favor New South Wales. And the warmer climate would be more equitable to students from Asia and the Pacific Islands.
Fine. Let's appoint a committee to select a site.
In mid-March, Stephen McCullough and A. Reiki, members of the site selection committee, visited a certain Brettville estate on Dora Creek, near Morisset and Cooranbong in New South Wales. they returned with a mixed report.
It's a fair distance from Sydney, and the travel's expensive.
Well, that's a serious drawback, isn't it, Elder White?
Well, I don't want to be hasty in judging, Elder Daniels. What else did you learn, Brother McCullough?
Well, since it's in the outback...
Pastor McCullough, perhaps I could speak to spare your throat.
Oh, thank you, Brother Reeky.
Since it's in the outback, there aren't many people, so there'd not be much opportunity for missionary outreach. The roads about aren't in good shape, and the land itself is poor.
Poor?
Yes, and it's low-lying besides, subject to flooding like. Not only that, but there's a community nearby of people descended from convicts sent out from England, and the sheriff says nothing's too hot or heavy for 'em to carry away.
I think we can forget this parcel.
Did you find anything good about it, Brother Reeky?
Fair dinkum we did, Pastor White. The whole 1,500 acres can be had for £900.
£900. $4,500, that's a moderate price for certain. Right, Elder Daniels?
Moderate indeed. And important with our finances in such straitened circumstances.
Timber on the land could be cut to provide an income, and it would be easy for the workers to rent temporary accommodations in the area. Labour's cheap for clearing the land, and building costs are low. In case of extremity, the fish from the lake could be used to supplement the food supply.
I think this is the best-sounding tract of land yet.
I don't know. But I suppose we ought to look.
Yes. Here we are planning to buy a large tract of land. We can scarcely get enough money to go and see it.
In April, the workers took an option on the land for $125 until A.G. Daniels, president of the Australian Conference, Willie, and others could inspect the property in mid-May. On May 23rd, Ellen White, in spite of illness, joined the group at the site. They took boats along Dora Creek, which was really a river, and in the afternoon, Ellen and Emily Campbell rested beside a fire built in the knot of a fallen blue gum, or eucalyptus tree, while the others explored the land.
Just look at all these immense trees around here, Emily. I can't for a moment believe that land which can produce such large trees can be of poor quality. I'm sure that if pains were taken with this land, as is customary in Michigan, it would be in every way productive.
Elder Daniels and some of the others are very uncertain. I wonder what they'll have to say after digging around the area all afternoon.
Welcome back, diggers. Although perhaps I shouldn't use that term. Around here, it means gold prospectors.
You look comfortable, Mother. We'll be glad to join you at the fire.
Here, Brother McCullough. I'll take your shovel.
Thanks, Brother Collins.
I admit I had some doubts about this property, Sister White, but we found some excellent land today, the best we've ever seen. Right, Brother Smith?
Good old Brother Collins, and we found another creek with cold, sweet water.
What was your impression, Brother Daniels?
Well, it did look better than I expected, but I'm still not convinced. I think we should spend another day investigating.
Very well, Elder Daniels. Let's load up the boats and get back to the fisherman's hut where the Lawrences are waiting for us. We can sleep on it and discuss it further in the morning. I don't understand your hesitation, Elder Daniels. The committee voted just last night to buy this acreage.
I can't help it, Elder White. I just don't think we should rush into a financial commitment on this land. Why don't we pray for God's special guidance before we leave the hut this morning?
And we plead with thee for some token, some special evidence that will make us all certain if we are moving in thy providence. Lord, we ask thee to bless, heal, and strengthen Brother McCullough, to ease the affliction of his lungs and throat.
Oh, praise the Lord. I can breathe freely. I can speak without pain. God has healed me.
Brethren, God is here with us. Why did he come so near and grant us this signal blessing? I accept it as evidence that we are in the right place.
There were several visits to the property. On one, Ellen found a plowed furrow she had seen in a dream. Those investigating the land shook their heads over the soil, just as they had in the dream. But an angel told her that false witness had been born of the land. Still, some hesitated, especially Daniels and Rousseau. A government fruit expert who had been hired to examine the land gave an unfavorable report that increased their doubts.
Here's my report on that Dora Creek land, Mr. Rousseau.
Thank you, Mr. Benson. What was your overall impression of the property?
Do you know what a bandicoot is?
Why, yes, it's a marsupial. About the size of a rabbit, I believe.
Well, if a bandicoot was to cross that land, he'd have to carry his lunch with him.
The decision to buy the property had been made in May. Then, in August, word was received that the Foreign Mission Board in Battle Creek advised against securing the land. Willie White stopped the work in progress at Kuranbong and sent the surveyor back to Sydney. The Union Committee met in Sydney in emergency session. Then Willie, Daniels, Reiki, and Rousseau sent for Ellen White to advise her of the action they had taken.
Mother, I'm sorry we had to call you back from your restful stay in Kuranbong. But we have grave news.
It must be grave indeed, from the looks on your faces.
The thing is, Sister White, the site committee has voted to delay further proceedings at Kuranbong.
The land just doesn't seem suitable for our work. We can't see our way clear to act against the advice we've received from Battle Creek.
Brother Rousseau is right. You've read Mr. Benson's report. This is the opinion of a government expert.
Is there no God in Israel to inquire of, that we have gone to the God of Ekron for counsel? Don't you remember when Elder McCullough was healed in the fisherman's hut?
Of course,
From that day, I felt no anxiety about this property. Oh, you may go on looking for a better place, and when you find one that satisfies you, I'll go with you to see it. But my spirit is at rest now.
You're that certain, Mother?
Just 2 days ago, I wrote in my diary that if the board wouldn't buy it, I'd secure the land myself and settle it with poor families. I plan to have missionary families come out from America and do the best kind of missionary work, educating the people as to how to till the soil and make it productive.
You've convinced me, Mother. I won't doubt again.
We will report this interview to the committee, Sister White. I don't think we'll be looking any further.
The Foreign Mission Board eventually withdrew its objection to establishing the school on the Brettville estate at Kuranbong. Meeting in connection with the Ashfield Camp meeting in November 1894, the Australasian Union Conference took the following action.
And whereas we believe that the Brettville estate can be made a suitable place for our proposed school, resolve that we proceed to the establishment of the Australasian Bible School on the said Brettville estate. All in favour?
Aye! At last, the actual work of establishing the training school could begin. Ellen White would remain in the forefront of the effort. While the workers were searching for a school site, they held the first camp meeting in Australia, which opened January 5th, 1894, in North Brighton, a suburb of Melbourne. After the successful camp meeting in Wellington, New Zealand, the workers had high hopes for this new evangelistic effort. It had been expected that 35 family tents would be enough, but in the end, There were more than 500 people staying in 100 tents on the grounds. Ellen White, Willie, and General Conference President O.A. Olson were delighted.
Thousands of people are visiting the campgrounds, some of them from far away.
And a large tent is filled every afternoon and evening, and the people listen eagerly to the truth. Don't they, Elder Olson?
Yeah, I have never before witnessed such an interest among those not of our faith. A most profound impression has been made on the city of Melbourne. The leading topic of conversation everywhere is the camp meeting. We've received appeals to hold meetings in communities all around.
It reminds me of the movement of 1844. The visitors value the privilege of hearing the word of God, and the truth takes hold upon them. Many of those who are interested are influential people.
Thank you for agreeing to see me, Mrs. White. I'm Mrs. Press. I've been especially pleased to hear your messages because I'm president of the Women's Christian Temperance Union in Australia.
It's a great pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Press. Temperance is a subject close to my heart.
That's why I wanted to see you. I understand you're a vegetarian. Do you eat meat at all?
Not as a rule, but sometimes when I travel. And some of those in my household plead for meat occasionally.
Mrs. White, I urge you to take an all-out stand to banish all meat from your table. Your influence in this matter would be tremendous. Please think about it.
I assure you I'll think very seriously about it. I haven't been at all happy about using meat or allowing it to be served in my home.
Mrs. Press was one of more than 100 people who joined the church as a result of the Brighton camp meeting and follow-up meetings in nearby towns. From this time on, Ellen White banned all meat from her table and diet. In March 1894, Ellen moved to Granville in the colony of New South Wales, where she did her best to relieve the financial suffering of the believers in this time of depression, while still trying to find time for her writing. It wasn't easy.
Were you able to get many pages written today, Mother?
No, Willie, I wasn't. We had so many visitors. I was busy all day taking care of them, as well as trying to get food supplies together to send to Hiram James and his family. I discovered they had nothing to eat but wild berries. Oh, I sent food to the Mackenzies, too.
The Mackenzies? They lost their farm, too, then?
Even their furniture. Like so many others, Brother Mackenzie has been unable to find work since accepting the Sabbath. We can't abandon those who take their stand for the Lord, but it gets harder and harder to help, especially now that the General Conference has cut my salary by $2 a week.
And mine's been cut by $1. The depression shows no signs of letting up, either here or in the United States.
Yet the demands increase. Besides the great suffering here that needs attention, the brethren in Battle Creek are urging me to hurry up and finish my book on the life of Christ, then go to Africa and Europe. And we're trying to establish a training school without enough money. I'm so tired.
You've overtaxed yourself for months, Mother. You must rest.
I'm tempted to board the next boat back to America, so I can settle down at Healdsburg and write without interruption. But I'll not turn and run. I'll trust the Lord.
Where are you going, Mother?
I have to arrange for some of my assistants to set up cots in the dining room for the night, again, to make room for the people staying over with us. If running a free hotel is the way I can help, then I'll be glad I can do it.
In May, Ellen rejoiced to receive word of Edson's reconversion. That month, Willie started looking for money to meet the first payment on the Brettville estate for the training school. $1,375 was due June 30th. Willie wrote to New Zealand, asking for help from Joseph Hare Jr. and brother and sister Pop, generous members of the church there. As the payment date drew nearer, his efforts intensified.
I still think we should forget the Currenbong land, Elder White. We can't even make the payment that's due in 2 days.
But we can, Elder Daniels. I have the money.
How did you manage that? The Australasian Conference simply doesn't have the funds.
I borrowed £150 from Brother Sherwin and £105 from the Australian Track Society today. And I scraped up all there was in our house. The payment will be made.
The camp meeting held in the Sydney suburb of Ashfield from October 18th to 30th, 1894, was another successful evangelistic endeavor and was followed by tent meetings. In accordance with Ellen's counsel, personal visitation was an important part of the follow-up. The success of the meetings roused bitter opposition from some other ministers, and in December, Pastor Picton, the minister of the Campbellite Church, challenged the brethren to a debate on the Sabbath.
We've decided to accept the challenge, Mother, though with great reluctance. The brethren are very aware of your objections to debate.
Yes, I do, as a rule, object to debating. Our people have been too fond of debating in the past.
I've heard it said that no one loves a fight like a 7-day Advent, except a Campbellite. And now we have the two of them in confrontation.
It's sad. Although our ministers win their points on Bible grounds, it's the spirit of debate which concerns me. It creates an influence on the debaters themselves that's contrary to the Spirit of God.
Your counsel has been borne out often. Some of the churches that have been raised up through debates have proven quarrelsome within themselves. And too many of our successful debaters have become proud and self-sufficient and have left the truth. Moses Hall, Hiram Case, Snook and Brinkerhoff, Dudley Canwright.
Oh, dear Brother Canwright. How your father loved him and depended on him. He was an enthusiastic debater and took delight in defeating all opponents, but now he writes books against our church. In fact, I understand that the opposing ministers are relying heavily on his books.
That's true.
I agree that the insistence of Pastor Picton and the threat to our tent meetings make a debate unavoidable in this case. And John Corliss is a good choice to speak for the Sabbath. He's an excellent teacher, very interesting, and he speaks with power and great clearness.
You anticipate no problems, then?
Oh, I didn't say that. In fact, I've been shown some potential hazards. Elder Corliss is quick-tempered, and he has a tendency to lash out at opponents. I must write to him immediately and caution him to place his full dependence on the Lord. He must stay on guard to keep his own natural temperament from showing through. His only safety is in keeping close to Jesus.
J.O. Corliss gratefully received Ellen's advice. No vote was taken at the end of the 6 debates, but the thunderous applause given to Elder Corliss indicated that most of his hearers were convinced of his explanation. As a result, attendance at the tent meetings remained strong. 27 people who had been attending joined the church immediately, and 20 others began to keep the Sabbath. During December and January, Ellen took advantage of the Australian summer to can hundreds of quarts of fruit with Emily Campbell and Maud Camp, the cook. About this time, she also received news of the death of Joshua V. Himes, one of the leading figures of the 1844 movement.
Elder Himes is dead. Mrs. Austin, his nurse, writes that he died at the Battle Creek Sanitarium.
Oh, how sad. He's written you several times in the last few months, hasn't he?
Yes, he has, Emily. And he sent money a couple of times to help our work here.
He never became an Adventist, did he, Mum?
Not a Seventh-day Adventist, Maud. But he continued to preach the soon coming of our Lord without setting times.
It's so sad to hear he's dead.
Mrs. Austin writes that he often said the work of Seventh-day Adventists is but the continuation of the work he and Father Miller began. and that if he were 25 years younger, he would take hold with our church and do what he could.
Praise God.
And since Cousin May had to return to the States, and Maud's not able to handle the heavy cooking anymore, you need help, Mother.
That's true. You think this young woman...
May Lacey.
May Lacey is the one to give me the help I need?
Absolutely. And she needs the money. Her father's on a fixed pension, and May has to repay personal loans some of the brethren made to her so she could complete her education.
But 21 is so young.
May's mature and quite capable, Mother. She's no little sallow, pinched-up body, nor a stuck-up lady. She's a good, big, wholesome woman, as tall as I am, and she weighs a few pounds more. Her vitals haven't been crushed by corsets. She can handle any work or difficult situation that comes.
Well, then, I'll trust your judgment, Willie. I'll be glad to hire Miss Lacey. Dear Edson, I soon learned why Willie was anxious for May Lacey. He loves her. You will have a new sister in a few months, if her father gives his consent. She is a treasure.
1895 began with plans for Willie and May's wedding, as well as continued efforts to establish the training school at Kuran Bong. There was still a lot of work ahead. Early in 1895, Mrs. A.E. Vessels, with other members of the diamond-rich South African family, visited the school site at Kuranbong, New South Wales, Australia. Mrs. Vessels' daughter, Anna Lindsay, donated $5,000 to help establish the school. In April, Ellen White traveled to Tasmania for a month to attend a church convention, and the wedding of 40-year-old Willie and 21-year-old May Lacey.
Mother White, could I speak with you?
Why, certainly, May. What's on your mind?
It's the wedding ring. I've read your counsel that money shouldn't be spent for a circlet of gold to testify that we're married.
Well, I wrote that to the American workers a couple of years ago because some thought they should follow the custom of this country in wearing the ring.
Well, I have no desire myself to wear the ring, but my father, he's adamant about the duty of a wife to wear one. He'd be very upset if I didn't, especially since I shall be traveling extensively with an American nearly twice my age.
Well, there's certainly something to that. I realize your British custom is quite different from the American.
And if I were to travel with Willie without the sign that I was his wife, people would be led to imagine all sorts of things, and we should lose much of our influence for good.
My dear, if you'll remember, I also wrote in that testimony that we have no burden to condemn those who have their marriage ring. I have no objection whatever to your wearing one.
May and Willie were married May 9th, 1895. 3 weeks later, Ellen and the newlyweds returned to Granville, where Willie's daughters, 13-year-old Ella and 8-year-old Mabel, had arrived from America. They were all delighted to be a family. Ellen's household was large, for, as usual, she had taken in a number of needy adults and children, providing jobs for some who had lost their income on accepting the Sabbath, and paying for the education of several children. To help provide cash for establishing the training school, Ellen bought 40 acres of the estate at Kuranbong, and in August 1895, the middle of the blustery, wet Australian winter, the 67-year-old woman visited the property with Emily Campbell and Ella. They lived in tents while Ellen made arrangements to plant orchards and build a home, and went in search of cows.
You drive horses very well, Grandma. I thought you were too sick.
I was sick when we first came here, Ella, but I'm feeling much better now.
Maybe you'd better wrap your shawl a little tighter, though, Mother White. The wind's picking up, and it looks like it's going to rain again.
Emily, I was born in Maine and lived for years in Michigan. After the winters I experienced there, a little rain and wind isn't going to hurt me.
Ooh, Grandma, look at all the piles of big trees burning.
Yes, the clearing is moving quickly, Ella, both on my property and on the school land. Brother Metcalf Hare has a lot of experience in clearing land. He and brothers Lawrence and Rousseau are leading groups of manual training students in the work. We have to get our orchards planted right away or lose a whole year.
What's wrong with waiting?
We have a duty. Preaching the gospel means more than just talking about Bible texts. The light given me from the Lord is that whatever land we occupy is to serve as an object lesson of what the land will do if properly worked.
People are already learning. They come to listen to Mr. Mosley tell how to grow fruit, and they buy trees from Mr. Rousseau.
When right methods of cultivation are adopted, there'll be far less poverty. If we accomplish this, we'll have done good missionary work.
Hey, there's a farm. Is that the one that has a cow for sale?
I believe it is.
A nice Jersey cow to give us lots of cream. I love cream and honey on my bread. Annie's learning to make real good whole wheat bread, Grandma. I'm glad you're teaching her to be a cook.
So am I, Ella. Now, let's go see about buying a cow.
On a summery Christmas day, 1895, Ellen's working family moved into the new house, Sunnyside. With a loan from the Vessels family, building at last began on the school, and on October 1st, 1896, Ellen laid the first brick of the women's dormitory. Early in 1897, Willie had to leave for the United States, and Stephen Haskell came from Africa to help. Haskell's wife Mary had died in 1894 at the age of 81. One night, the 61-year-old widower, overcome with loneliness, fell into a restless sleep, but was soon awakened by a light.
What's that light? Why, there's someone in the room. Who are you?
Stephen.
Mary?
Stephen, I've come to bring you comfort. I shall ever watch over you, for I'm nearer to you now than when I lived on earth.
It's Mary's voice. So natural, so sweet.
That's it. Reach out your arms to me.
No. The dead know not anything.
Oh, Stephen, don't you know me?
No, I never knew you. You're not my Mary. You're an evil spirit sent by Satan to deceive me. And in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, I command you to depart and to trouble me no more. Oh, it's gone. It looked and sounded so much like Mary. But in that instant before it vanished, the gentle expression turned to malignant rage. Have I shown some weakness, that the devil dared to approach me like this?
As Stephen prayed earnestly, he remembered Ellen White's counsel in early writings, in which she said that the spirits of devils would appear to the saints, professing to be loved ones. Then he prayed again, thanking God for the warning against the subtle enemy. Now, in February 1897, the 60th year of Queen Victoria's reign, 64-year-old Stephen and 40-year-old Hetty Hurd were married in Sydney. Hetty had worked with Stephen in England a few years earlier, and they had recently become reacquainted in Africa, where she was teaching. After the wedding, the couple hurried to Kuranbong to teach at the school. There was work to be done first, though, and as the opening date for school approached, Metcalf Hare reported a new crisis.
Sister White, thank you for inviting me to meet with you and Sister Haskell and Sister McIntyre this evening.
Thank you for coming, Brother Hare. We need to discuss the problems with the building work.
I've noticed that the brethren who are working off their pledges are doing work that's, well, indifferent at best.
Aye, Sister McIntyre, and when we told the paid workers we had to cut down on hours to save money, many of them left to get jobs that pay better. Sure, and I don't see how we can get the work finished on time.
The school must open on time.
Sister White, since Pastor Haskell was called to Adelaide because of Pastor McCullough's apostasy, the heart's fair gone out of me.
Well, we're all saddened that Pastor McCullough has turned his back on the church, and after his miraculous healing, too. I heard about that.
'Tis true, Sister Haskell, but even if your husband succeeds in winning Pastor McCullough back to the truth, the fact remains that we're out of money, and we just can't finish on time.
Could you give me some figures? For instance, how many hands are needed on the building? How many on the cistern? How many on... Well, I believe I've got it all written down. Thank you, Brother Hare.
But I don't understand, Sister Haskell. What good will all this do?
We'll have every position filled.
'Tis impossible. You'll never do it.
Oh, I wouldn't be so quick to say impossible. Sister Haskell has a way of getting things done. And I'll help. At tomorrow's 6 a.m. meeting, I'll call for a work bee. For my part, I'll lend my workmen, Brethren Connell, James, and Warsnap, and I'll pay their wages.
No need to pay me, Sister White. I have a 2 weeks pledge to work out.
Thank you, Brother Connell.
And I'll give it a week's work without pay in any place you put me.
Me too.
So will I.
You can count on me.
Wherever you need me.
How are your spirits now, Brother Hare?
Excellent, Sister White. We've over 30 people here, and they're not just mucking about. Women and children cleaned the first building yesterday, and some girls passed bricks to Brother Richardson in the cellar.
And who are these busy carpenters with nails in their mouths?
Good morning, Sister White. Brother James positions the boards, and Sarah and I drive the nails in.
You're doing an excellent job of it, Sister Haskell. You're nearly halfway through already, and you've only been at it 1 day.
Sister Haskell's leadership has helped more than I can say. The women's diligent work has done more to inspire the men than any orders I could give.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. I've received some good news from Willie, too. He writes that the General Conference has voted to send Professor C.B. Hughes here from Texas. Professor Hughes is a well-qualified and experienced educator.
Wonderful!
Stephen McCullough was returned to the fold, but unfortunately he left the church again in 1899 because he disapproved of paying salaries to ministers. The Kuranbong building project was completed. Sarah McIntyre raised money to buy a bell for the institution, and Avondale School opened on schedule, April 28, 1897, with 2 students. The enrollment quickly grew to 62 pupils, most of them academy age. The dream had come true at last. The Australasian Union had a training school. From the beginning of evangelism in Australia and New Zealand, Adventists lectured on the dangers of alcohol, tobacco, and the abuse of foods. One result of this emphasis on health was that late in 1896, the Health Home was established in Sydney under the direction of Brother and Sister Semmons. It was still a struggling new enterprise in February 1897 when Stephen Haskell arrived from Africa. Sarah McInterfer, who was so close to Ellen White that she called the older woman mother, had just rejoined Sister White's workforce.
Sarah, drop everything. I've just had a letter from Stephen Haskell. He wants us to meet him at the health home to counsel together.
Of course, Mother, but why not meet here? This is where Elder Haskell's coming anyway, isn't it?
He's waiting to marry Hetty Hurd, and she's quarantined on board ship. It seems one of the passengers came down with smallpox just before the ship arrived in Sydney.
Oh, I pray the passenger will be all right, and that no one else gets it. As soon as we're packed, I'll harness our fastest team to take us to the train station.
Do that. Just be careful to give Tiglath-Pileser a wide berth. He doesn't know you yet.
Tiglath-Pileser?
The watchdog. He terrorizes would-be thieves as thoroughly as any Assyrian king ever terrorized his enemies.
I'll be careful, and I'll do my best to get you to the health home so we don't disappoint Elder Haskell.
The health home is a brave enterprise, Ellen, but I haven't noticed many patients.
That's true, Stephen. I hope it'll prove a success, although it's just an experiment as yet. I've donated £35 already, but I can see Brother and Sister Simmons need more help.
I'll rent a room for a weekly sum and provide the furnishings. If the institution proves a success, the Simmonses can pay me back from their earnings.
What an excellent idea. I'll do the same. That way, I'll always have a place to stay when I come to the city, and it can be used by other workers, too, when they pass through.
Mother, Elder Haskell, good news! Dr. Kellogg has sent some health foods from Battle Creek. Selling them will bring in money Brother and Sister Simmons need.
Back at Kuranbong, Ellen was busy. She had to oversee the building of Willie's house while he was in the U.S. She was called on to answer questions of doctrine and administration, and she was expected to attend camp meetings and other evangelistic endeavors. Times were hard, and because money for the school came in with painful slowness, the hired workers suffered. Ellen's granddaughter Ella recalled how Ellen would drive her horse and carriage around the school property and stop to tell stories to the workers' children.
Come on, it's Mrs. White. She's telling stories. Hurry, it's story time.
Ella, see that poor girl in the short yellow dress? Go stand next to her.
All right, Grandma, but why?
I want to get an idea of her size so I can make her some new clothes.
Oh.
We'll bring them with us next time. Mabel, you go stand by that boy in the ragged pants. What's your schedule for this morning, Sarah?
I plan to step around to check on May and the twins first. Those little boys are getting so lively. May will be delighted when her own house is finished and she can move out of the wash house.
And Mabel and Ella will be glad when they don't have to wash the clothes in the pond anymore. Although they do enjoy watching the platypus teach her babies to swim.
Oh, they're dear girls. Will you ride out with me this afternoon to visit the sick neighbors?
Yes, I will. You're doing a good work here, Sarah. I do believe your nursing skills will help to break down the prejudice against us.
I hope so. Didn't you say you had a couple of letters to be typed today?
Yes. I've written an answer to Professor Sutherland at Battle Creek College and to the principal of South Lancaster Academy. It seems some people are advocating a return to the old reform dress and causing some stir and controversy.
It's hard to believe they can be serious.
Oh, why won't people be sensible, Sarah? God doesn't call us to be odd. We should follow the dress customs appropriate to the age we live in, so long as they're modest and don't violate health principles. We have enough tests in this world. There's no need to add tests of human invention to create controversy.
Ellen's attention was everywhere. She even took care to demonstrate how the wild Australian cows, through kind treatment, could be made gentle enough to come at her call. In December 1898, she rejoiced to receive printed copies of her long-delayed book on the life of Christ. The Pacific Press had named the book The Desire of Ages. In the meantime, the health work was growing. The periodical Herald of Health was launched in Melbourne in 1898. In July of that same year, the health home in the Summerhill suburb of Sydney changed its name to the Medical and Surgical Sanitarium of Summerhill. Ellen insisted that the medical missionary work must be largely self-supporting. At the New South Wales Conference meeting in Stanmore on July 25, 1898, policies at the sanitarium were discussed.
Elder White, I'm wondering how the sanitarium should handle the question of meat eating.
So am I.
I thought it was clear that we advocate a diet without flesh foods.
But should the sanitarium maintain this principle for patients who haven't been instructed in vegetarian diet?
Wouldn't it be well to let them have meat at first? Then we could educate them away from the appetite by lectures.
And when they've heard the lectures, they should be more ready to give up meat.
Mother, do you have a comment?
It seems to me that to condemn meat eating as injurious, and then to give the injurious article to patients, is a denial of our principles. How can this be in accordance with our teachings on health reform?
I never thought of it that way.
Makes sense.
I'll agree with that.
How many agree there must be no drawing back on this question? Shall we leave meat off the menu at the sanitarium?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm happy with what the conference session achieved, Willie. Not only is meat permanently off the menu at the sanitarium, but we agreed to serve no tea or coffee there, and to avoid the harmful drugs so often used in medicine.
It's another step in building the health work, Mother, and there's more to come. In a few days, I'll be leaving for Melbourne to meet with the new Australasian Medical Missionary and Benevolent Association.
Well, I hope you'll consider plans for the health food business, too. Not much has been done since the Australasian Union voted last year to establish a factory in Melbourne.
You're right. We really need to manufacture our own health foods right here in Australia. Import duties are high, and transactions with companies in the United States are slow. I agree, Brother Carroll. With the health food business in Cooranbong,
I don't understand why you're trying to move everything out of Melbourne. First you talk about moving the Union Conference office to Sydney, now the health food business to Sydney or Cooranbong. Melbourne has always been the centre of the work in Australia.
I agree with Brother Falkett. We should keep everything right here.
I don't wish to offend you, Brother Michaels, but I think we have more important things to talk about than where to locate the health food factory. I move we appoint a committee to find a site for the factory so the rest of us can get on with business.
That sounds good to me. In the meantime, I'll write to my mother. I know she received some light on this matter a few weeks ago. I'll ask her to help us.
Within days, Ellen White sent a letter relating a vision she had been given twice. Willie read the letter at the council meeting.
I saw quite a change being made. There was a transferring of workers, and our counselor was saying the same men should not continue a length of time in one place. I would encourage the movement you suggest, and believe the Lord is in Elder Daniels moving to Sydney at this time.
I'm convinced.
I withdraw my objections.
The message is clear to me.
In the end, the old sawmill at Cooranbong was converted into a health food factory, where parents could earn the money to send their children to school. The factory was in business by December of 1899. The same year, the new Sydney Sanitarium was built. Sarah McInterfer's medical service around Cooranbong laid the groundwork for a hospital, which was opened there January 1st, 1900. In April 1899, Avondale College faced a crisis. A woman who had lent $1,500 to the school asked for her money immediately. Funds expected from America had not come, and there was nothing in the treasury even to pay the workers. A.G. Daniels walked out into the bush and spent the night in prayer until he felt assurance of God's presence. The next morning, the school board authorized him to travel to Sydney, Melbourne, and Adelaide to seek funds. Accompanied by Brother Falkhead, he visited the publishing house in Melbourne. At the end of the day, having exhausted all other possibilities, Brother Falkhead had one more suggestion.
Perhaps the bank that the publishing house does business with would give you a loan? It's 4 o'clock, so the bank's closed, but we might visit the banker at home.
I don't see what good that will do, but last night I opened my Bible at random, something I never do, and the text I read was, "The God whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee." Let's try it.
That's the bank. Why, look, the door's open. Let's go inside.
Whoa! Falkhead? How did you get in?
We walked in.
How did you get that door open? I shut, bolted, locked and chained that door myself.
We didn't touch it. It was open.
Let me get it locked up again right away. What is it that you want?
We want £300 to meet an obligation in the morning.
As the men left the bank carrying the money, Daniels rejoiced that his God had indeed delivered him. When he related the story on Sabbath morning, the woman lent the $1,500 again, with $375 more as penalty. At the Geelong camp meeting in March 1900, Ellen White was suddenly overwhelmed with the conviction that she was needed in the United States. On August 29, 1900, Ellen, her assistants, and Willie and his family boarded the Moana for the voyage home. During nearly 9 years in Australia, Ellen had seen the work there come of age.